Can we get specific data once you move the hotspot? And I know that we don't publicize the hotspots because we don't want bad guys to know where they are, right? But when once we've moved it, can we see statistics to show before and after, like what the effect of the concentration in that area
Yes.
happened to be?
Yes,
Okay. And then do we track, one of the slides you tracked gender and race in regard to homicides. Do we track sexual orientation, that demographic?
No, we do not.
Is it possible to do that? I think that could be helpful to see.
No, it's be kind of difficult to ask a victim's survivors what that question.
Okay.
So,
That's fair. I think it would be helpful. I'm thinking specifically related to hate crimes, are we tracking that anywhere?
well, in a hate crime, it's different. We would be able to, we
Okay.
would know that because
Okay.
a hate crime, there's got to be some expression of, of why the person is assaulting or murdering the person that they're assaulting or murdering. So,
Okay.
you so-and-so, so-and-so, and they wind up killing them or assaulting them. So we do have that information.
Okay, so what are the numbers on that? Or can you give
Pardon?
that to us? Can you give us those numbers in the future by email or another presentation?
Sure. And to my immediate knowledge, we have not had any hate crime murders that I can recall, at least last year. No.
Okay. I think, I'd like to see those numbers. I'll say that when I look at the statistics, that we hear so much about road rage incidents and, I'm an attorney, so I read a lot about, dealing with car accidents and things
Sure.
like that. You have some road rage. And here, if I saw it correctly, there was not only, but there was one incident this last year, which is, better than 100. But, of course, we'd like to see that back to zero. But I think the statistics just kind of help put into perspective what you hear about, that there's this horrible road rage.
Sure. And oftentimes,
Problem.
I mean, if oftentimes we're not able to find out who,
Sure.
did the shooting, just because if it's 16:04 at 3 o'clock in the morning and there's no tag number gotten, it's tough to find out who did it. So we really don't have much information on that, but we do see road rage happening fairly frequently.
Maybe just doesn't result in an arrest. Is that what's happening?
We do make arrests. If we get a tag number, we're pretty likely to make that arrest after some investigation.
Okay. I guess that's a little different because we're specifically talking about homicides. This is a road rage homicide, and then I'm sort of shifting over to the incidence of road rage. But going back, so I want to be clear too that the statistics I'd like to see are not necessarily related just to homicides, hate crimes of resulting in homicides, but just any statistic around it. What's the prevalence of hate crime in our city? Not just based on sexual orientation, but race, gender, all the
Sure.
all the other.
The prevalence of hate crime in San Antonio is rather low. When we read about or hear about someone distributing whatever it may be, anti-Semitic, anti-racial, whatever it may be, that's not a hate crime. It's basically a First Amendment issue that they're
Sure.
free to say what they want to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we do become very aware of that and very sensitive to what may happen as a result of that information being distributed.
They don't all rise to the level of like a chargeable offense, right? A crime, right?
Pardon?
They don't all rise, those incidents of
No.
distributing literature, they don't all rise to the level of offense that you would arrest somebody or a crime.
Correct.
Okay. I just have some technical questions. On that 9th slide, you have OIS, homicide. What is OIS?
Officer-involved shooting.
Okay. So there was one last year, one homicide last year.
Is it-
Yes,
One.
yes.
Yes.
And it was a chief of UNL elaborated. It was a police officer who was involved in an officer-involved shooting, and earlier, and he, after he separated, he died. And I believe the medical examiner's office declared that it was related to that officer-involved shooting. from
He
earlier.
was shot, this officer, David Evans, was shot in the, I think it was the Denny shooting, is that right? Denny? Yeah, the Denny shooting, when there were 3 or 4 officers shot, and he was severely injured, but recovered and continued to work. But the injury from that gunshot wound eventually killed him, and is counted as a murder in the year that the officer died, not back then. It's counted in the year that the officer died.
Okay. On to something a little different, not quite as dangerous, but very prevalent, is the property crimes. And there was an increase by 14%, it looks like. Do we have any specific plan to target property crime?
Any specific target?
Plan to target property crime?
You know, Councilmember, they're happening all over the place. I mean, if you looked at the crime maps, especially leading up to Christmas, if you looked at the crime maps, you'd probably take a deep breath, because they're so prevalent. And that's one of the reasons why we start we had the vehicle burglary task force.
Yeah, and I think, Chief, the councilwoman was specifically asking if there's any initiatives that we have ongoing to try to address property crime, like you mentioned, this task force, and also if you want to a little bit talk about the violent crime reduction plan, that one of the impacts that we'll have will be also property crime.
Sure. So I think our best weapon against property crimes is education. How many times do you see or read about people getting guns stolen from their cars, purses stolen from their cars, computers, whatever it may
They're
be?
unlocked cars, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I've been preaching that for years and years and years. Don't leave things in your vehicle. And I'll tell you a quick funny story. So about 15 years ago, I was having dinner with Cappy Lawton, the restaurant guy.
Yeah.
He and his wife and my wife were at his house. He invited us over for dinner. We're having a very pleasant conversation, and all of a sudden, his face goes from this to that, and he says, "Why can't you stop people from breaking into my customers' cars in my parking lot?" And I said, "Why can't you stop your customers from leaving property in their cars where it can be seen?" And we laughed and moved on from there. But that's an issue that continues to happen.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
think education is our best weapon against
Yeah,
it.
and when you say education, it's really about prevention, right?
Right.
Making sure we prevent those kinds of crimes. But we do need to look at the other side of it. There are people that are they're gonna leave their cars unlocked, or they're gonna leave the gun in the car. So how we attack it from the other side is important. I just want to make one more quick point about, a lot of these numbers are going down, especially crimes against society, looking at gambling and prostitution, those kinds of things. But the numbers that are going up, I think, are a little bit, we have to take into account the fact that our population has grown too. So we have the same number of officers that have been protecting our city with this population, and now the population's increased, and there's just more to do, more. So I just want to make that point, that they all, not all the numbers look great, they're not all going down, but we do have a growing population. And I say that with great sensitivity because my district is growing. My far west side in San Antonio is booming.
And I'd be leaving a big part out of this if I didn't mention it. But I will tell you that the criminal justice system is not in sync right now. So I'll leave it at that without going into detail. But unless the criminal justice is in sync, we're just going to see a repeat of these numbers.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Council members, any comments?